My girlfriend fake proposed to me 15 times as jokes. Now I am done being her joke. That thought, sharp and final, was the only thing I could hold on to after the 15th time. For 4 years, Stanley, 32 years old and a physical therapist at a rehab center, had been caught in this ridiculous loop with her. We had been together for 4 years and living together for 2. We met at a friend's birthday party and truly clicked. We had the same sense of humor, both loved hiking, and both talked about wanting kids someday. We shared a life that, on paper, looked perfect. I was a physical therapist, and I was stable. We had even looked at houses together, planning for a real future. Everyone assumed we would be next, especially after her sister got engaged and my brother got married. I had even given a heartfelt speech at my brother's reception about finding your person. The expectations were high, and she seemed to thrive on them. The first fake proposal happened on my 29th birthday. We were at this crowded, slightly expensive Italian restaurant we both loved. She started acting so nervous. She kept checking her pocket, clearing her throat, and looking down like she had something momentous to say. My heart was actually pounding. Then, she got down on one knee right there in the middle of the dining room. I started crying immediately. I couldn't stop it. She pulled out a jewelry box and opened it, revealing a pair of tiny silver earrings. She said she wanted to give them to me in a special way. The entire restaurant had been watching, and several people actually clapped before realizing what a fool I looked like. I laughed it off, trying to be a good sport, but a sick feeling settled in my gut. The second time was worse. It was Thanksgiving at my parents' house. She clinked her glass during dinner, signaling a toast in front of my whole extended family. She started talking about how much she loved me, and how grateful she was to be part of the family. Then, she got down on one knee right on the hardwood floor. My mother started tearing up, and my father actually stood up, bracing for the moment. She pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of a terrier puppy she wanted us to adopt. She said she needed my permission first. My teenage cousin booed her loudly. My mother didn't speak to her for the rest of the night, but she didn't care. She kept doing it. Christmas morning, I closed my eyes and she led me to the tree. When I opened them, she was on one knee, holding a wrapped present. It was a fitness tracker. New Year's Eve, at midnight, in front of all our friends at a massive party, she dropped to one knee. Everyone pulled out their phones to film the big moment. She asked if I would make her the happiest man alive, and agreed to join his gym membership so we could work out together. Our friends, sensing the repeated humiliation, slowly stopped inviting us to things. She had turned our impending engagement into a recurring, painful joke, and I, too afraid to confront the source of my own misery, just kept showing up as the punchline. The cumulative weight of these constant, public humiliations reached a critical mass, but the final, unforgivable insult was reserved for a moment of genuine tragedy. Before we reached that lowest point, though, the pattern became unbearable, not just for me, but for everyone around us. Valentine's Day arrived. She did it at a packed restaurant, having hired a violin player. The violinist was mid-song when she dropped to one knee, and asked if I would be her partner for the cooking class she had signed us up for. The violinist literally walked away mid-song. That moment felt like a physical representation of my life. The music stopped, and everyone realized the grand gesture was just a joke at my expense. The next year, my birthday came around again. Another fake proposal, this time to ask if I would go on vacation with her. By then, I had stopped crying. I had stopped even reacting. I just stood there, waiting for whatever dumb punchline she was leading up to. The numbness was the most painful part. She did it on hikes with strangers watching. She did it at the beach with families staring. She even did it at my work Christmas party, and my boss later pulled me aside, looking genuinely concerned, and asked if everything was okay at home. That was the moment I realized her jokes were not just hurting me, they were jeopardizing my professional life. The 13th time was at her sister Chloe's baby shower. She actually grabbed the microphone, interrupting the party games, and announced she had something important to ask me. She got on her knee in front of 50 women, all of whom held their breath, and asked if I would be her date to her high school reunion. Chloe's mother-in-law, a sweet woman usually, said it was the tackiest thing she had ever seen. The 14th time, she reached a new level of audacity. It was during my cousin's actual wedding reception. She grabbed the microphone during the couple's cake cutting, claiming she had been inspired by their love. She dropped to her knee on the dance floor and asked if I would sit for her brother next weekend. The bride cried, and not in a good way. The DJ, who I had known since high school, actually cut the music and told us to leave. The sheer, deliberate wreckage she left in her wake was staggering, yet I still stayed. I was paralyzed by the sunk cost fallacy. I had invested 4 years and 14 humiliations. Surely, I couldn't leave before I got the real thing. But the 15th time, the last time, was the absolute worst. Her mother had died suddenly from a heart attack, and we were at the funeral reception. Everyone was grieving, the room heavy with sorrow. She stood up during the speeches about her mother, saying that her mom had always wanted her to settle down. She got on one knee in front of everyone and pulled out an actual proper velvet ring box. My heart stopped. I felt the blood drain from my face, convinced this was the moment. She opened it, and inside was a key. She asked if I would keep watering her mom's plants since her mother had left them to her. A gasp went around the room. Her aunt, a stoic, quiet woman, stood up and slapped her across the face. Not a light tap, but a firm, resounding slap that echoed in the silence. Her own aunt slapped her at her mother's funeral, and yet, she still didn't apologize or acknowledge the cruelty of the moment. It was in that stunned silence, watching the red welt rise on her cheek, that I knew exactly what I had to do. The 15 fake proposals, the public shame, the final, unforgivable act at a funeral. It had shattered the paralyzing fear I had lived with. My feeling of deep shame gave way to cold, calculated resolve. I was done being the passive victim. I was going to get out, and I was going to make sure she finally understood, with painful clarity, exactly how it felt to be the joke. The next 2 months became a military, precise operation, necessary to execute the only exit strategy that would truly make her understand. The clarity that followed her mother's funeral was terrifying in its coldness. I knew I couldn't just walk out the door. She would spin it as me overreacting to her jokes. The pain had to be transferred directly and publicly. My initial step was to secure an anchor and a location. I told her we needed to visit her father, Marcus Harris, more often after the sudden death of her mother. Marcus, a retired architect, lived about 3 hours away, but she immediately agreed, pleased that I was showing such sensitivity. We started driving up every weekend. I would cook for Marcus, clean his house, and help him organize his late wife's belongings. It was during these quiet, shared moments of grief that I started building a genuine, meaningful relationship with a man I barely knew before. Marcus was quiet, kind, and deeply appreciative of the help. I had lost my own grandmother recently and understood the silent weight of grief. We talked about architecture, my work as a physical therapist, and his decades-long marriage. He never minimized my feelings, and he listened with an easy, genuine warmth that I realized my girlfriend had systematically stripped from my life. He became the father figure I secretly craved. But this relationship, genuine as it quickly became, was also the foundation of my strategy. I was navigating the cognitive dissonance of planning manipulation while forming a real, loving bond. Every weekend I spent with Marcus, listening to his stories and helping him heal, the guilt twisted in my stomach. Yet, I justified it, telling myself this connection was too valuable to abandon, and that the only way to keep it was to expose the truth about her to the one person who deserved honesty. Marcus, completely unaware of the storm I was brewing, started calling me his son. "You're the son I never knew I needed, Stanley," he told me one rainy afternoon while we were moving heavy boxes. That small offhand comment was the validation I had been craving for years, and it simultaneously cemented my purpose and deepened my guilt. This man's heart was already broken by loss. I was about to break his family structure too. After 2 months of this intense bonding, I suggested we throw Marcus a small birthday party to cheer him up. It was the perfect stage. I convinced her to invite the whole family, her cousins, her sister Chloe, her uncle who was always so judgmental, and her father's friends and long-time neighbors. I needed a full house of witnesses. I needed every person who had watched me become the fool 15 times to watch her become the humiliated one. And I needed the confrontation to happen in front of the one person I had come to genuinely care for. She thought the party was a sweet gesture. She was pleased that I was so invested in her family's well-being. She looked pleased, and I felt sick. As the day approached, I finalized the details with the precision of a military strike. The location was set, the witnesses were confirmed, and the emotional anchor, Marcus, was positioned exactly where I needed him to be. I knew what I was about to do was cruel, but I also knew I was fighting 4 years of psychological warfare with the only weapon she had left me: theatrical public humiliation. There was no going back. The stage was set. The night of Marcus's birthday party arrived, and the air was thick with expectation, though only Stanley knew the script for the evening's dramatic conclusion. The house was full. All the relatives who had witnessed her embarrassing antics, all the family friends who knew about her late mother and Marcus's grief. I could see Chloe, my closest confidante in the family, sitting near the kitchen, watching me with a nervous intensity that suggested she suspected something was wrong, even if she didn't know the exact plan. We finished dinner, and the dessert plates were being cleared. The sound of clinking silverware and low conversations filled the dining room, a temporary fragile peace. I felt the surge of adrenaline, cold and electric. As I stood up, I picked up a fork and clinked it against my water glass, silencing the room. The moment I had been planning for 2 long, deliberate months was finally here. I started my speech genuinely. I talked about family, about the devastating loss of her mother, and about how coming together for Marcus was an act of healing. I looked at Marcus and my eyes were wet. The emotions were real, drawn from the time we had shared. I spoke about commitment, the kind that wasn't about words or rings, but about showing up consistently for the people you love. Then, I shifted my focus to her. She looked confused but pleased, thinking this was a loving tribute to her family and a validation of her efforts. I said, "You have shown me something important with all your proposals over the years, and I need to show you that commitment is about more than just words." She frowned slightly, but before she could interrupt, I turned back to Marcus. My heart hammered against my ribs, so loud I thought the person next to me must surely hear it. I drew a deep breath and deliberately, slowly, got down on one knee. The motion was painful against the hardwood floor, but I didn't rush it. I focused only on Marcus's face. The room went completely silent. You could have heard the quiet hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Everyone recognized the posture, the ritual, the 4 years of conditioned expectation. My hands, which I held open and slightly shaking, contained no ring, no puppy photo, no key, just the cold, naked truth. I looked Marcus directly in the eye, and my voice, steadier than I felt, carried clearly through the room. "Marcus," I asked, "will you let me be your son-in-law, because I am leaving your daughter, and I want to keep you as a father figure?" The reaction was instantaneous and absolute chaos. Marcus, who had been lifting a forkful of cake to his mouth, froze, the utensil suspended in midair. Her face cycled through shock, confusion, and then sheer horror. Her uncle, a bulky man with a perpetually red face, shot up from his chair, which scraped harshly against the floor. He pointed at me, sputtering incoherently as other relatives started shouting questions and talking over each other in a rising crescendo of noise. She stumbled backward like I had physically shoved her, even though I was still 3 feet away on one knee. Her hands flew up to her head, and she made a strangled, choking sound. I stayed put, my knee aching against the floor. I watched as a woman I didn't know started crying, and someone near the back dropped a glass that shattered into glittering pieces. Chloe stood up quickly and tried to grab her sister's arm, but she violently pulled away. The room got louder and louder with the shouting of accusations and questions. Marcus finally lowered his fork, his eyes wide and wet. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing without sound, then at his daughter, then back at me, trying to solve the puzzle of what I had just said. His face shifted through 5 different expressions in 10 seconds. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning painful understanding. I knew then that the first shot had landed precisely where it needed to. The damage was done. The conflict was finally out in the open, raw and explosive. The room had exploded, but the real test was not the chaos around them. It was the look on her face and the chance to finally speak the truth that had been locked inside for 4 years. The air was thick and metallic with emotional shrapnel, heavy and close like a summer storm before the lightning. I slowly pushed myself up, my knee protesting against the hard floor. Every eye in the room was fixed on me. I looked at Marcus, and I reiterated the part that mattered most to my own conscience. Marcus, I want to keep you in my life as family. The past 2 months were real. Then I turned to her. She had found her voice, high and strained, and she yelled something about what the hell I thought I was doing. Before I could answer, Chloe, her sister, started laughing from across the room. It was a loud, barking sound that made people turn to stare. Chloe slapped her knee, pointed at her sister, and laughed harder. Then, gathering herself, Chloe managed to grab her sister's arm and yanked her back down into her chair. She fought Chloe, but Chloe was stronger. Her face cycled from paper white to angry red to purple. I stood tall, feeling the dizzying rush of my own pulse in my throat. I addressed the room, my voice steady, cutting through the noise. She showed me that a proposal doesn't have to be about marriage. She showed me that proposals can mean whatever you want them to mean. They can be about asking someone to join a gym, or water plants, or go to a high school reunion. I paused, letting that truth hang in the air. I looked straight at her, who was struggling against Chloe's grip. This is about asking someone to keep a father figure after you leave their daughter. She made a strangled, choking sound, and the color drained completely from her face. Several people gasped at once. A horrified whisper spread through the crowd. That's brutal. Marcus finally spoke, his voice quiet and shaking. He looked at me, then at his daughter, then back at me. Stanley, is this revenge? The room shut up completely to hear my answer. I knew I had to be honest with Marcus, even if it meant risking the connection we had built. Yes, Marcus, it started as revenge, I admitted, my voice dropping to a low, intense level. But the feelings I have for you are real. What we built these past 2 months meant something. I had to make her feel what I have felt publicly, 15 times over 4 years, in front of everyone she cares about. She exploded out of her chair again, and this time, Chloe couldn't hold her. She screamed that I was manipulative, cruel, and that I had destroyed her family and humiliated her. Chloe's voice, sharp and commanding, cut through her yelling. Oh, now you know how it feels. You've been doing the same thing to Stanley for 4 years! How does it feel? Having your emotions played with in front of everyone you know. Do you like being the punchline? The relatives started murmuring. Some nodded slowly. The tide of judgment was shifting. I seized the moment. I turned back to Marcus and spoke the final, definitive words. Marcus, I am leaving your daughter. I am moving out, but I want to maintain a relationship with you if you are willing. The room fell into a dead, absolute silence. Marcus stared at me for what felt like an hour. Then he looked at his daughter, who was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. I delivered the killing blow, the one reserved for her alone. My voice was low, for her ears only, but the silence made it carry. I stopped loving you somewhere around fake proposal number 8, 2 years ago. I've just been going through the motions, waiting for you to either actually propose or give me a real reason to leave. Her face went paper white. She looked utterly demolished. Marcus finally held up one hand, silencing the angry uncle who was about to yell again. His gesture was small but firm. This is my house, and it is my decision, he stated clearly. He looked back at me. I need time, Stanley. Time to process everything before I can answer. I nodded. That was more than fair. I grabbed my purse, told Marcus I understood and was sorry for the dramatic method, but that I needed her to understand the cost of her cruelty. As I headed for the door, I saw the family splitting in real time, half glaring at me, half looking at her with disgust. The tension was suffocating. I had torn her world apart, just as she had torn mine apart with every single joke. The drive home was a blur of adrenaline and tears, but the immediate goal was not revenge, it was survival, and the certainty of finally being free. Chloe, her sister, had followed me out and immediately pulled me into a tight hug on the front lawn. I have wanted to slap her myself for years. Stanley, she whispered fiercely. What she did to you was cruel. She absolutely deserved that. Call me anytime. We are still family. She gave me her number, a crucial lifeline, before heading back inside. The 3-hour drive back to our shared apartment felt endless. My hands shook so hard on the steering wheel I had to grip it, until my knuckles were white just to keep the car steady. The adrenaline made my whole body vibrate, cycling through laughter and sobbing every few minutes. I felt vindicated and terrified all at once. The emotional climax had passed, and now I faced the logistics of ending a 4-year life. When I finally pulled into the apartment parking lot, I sat in the car for 5 minutes, just breathing and trying to stop the tremors. Then, I went inside and started packing. I pulled boxes from the hall closet and began throwing clothes into them with furious energy. I knew she would be home soon, maybe less than an hour, and I needed to be gone. I was emptying my dresser when the front door burst open right around midnight. The lock turning sounded like a gunshot. She stormed into the bedroom, looking completely wrecked, her face streaked with tears and rage. The biggest, most volcanic fight of our entire relationship exploded into the small space. She screamed that I was cruel, manipulative, and vindictive, claiming I had humiliated her and destroyed her family in front of everyone she loved. I didn't back down. I threw the first fake proposal in her face, describing exactly how I felt at the Italian restaurant when she pulled out earrings instead of a ring. I described the second one, Thanksgiving, and the sight of my mother crying and my father standing up, only to be hit with a joke about dog adoption. I walked through all 15 of them, one by one. I had to make you feel what I felt, the only way that would ever get through your thick skull. I yelled, my voice hoarse. Your own aunt slapped you at your mother's funeral, and you still didn't stop, still didn't understand the damage you were doing. She tried to interrupt, saying they were just jokes and I was blowing everything out of proportion. I didn't let her. I just kept going, listing the humiliations, the whispering strangers, the friends who abandoned us, my boss's pity. While her tears turned from angry tears to genuine sobs of shock and realization, I kept packing. She tried to grab my arm, pleading, we can fix this, Stanley. We can go to counseling. I swear I'll never do it again. I pulled away, dragging a heavy cardboard box toward the door. I stopped in the doorway and looked back at her. Her face was white, hopeful, and desperate. I gave her the final, cold truth. I stopped loving you somewhere around fake proposal number 8. I've just been going through the motions since then, waiting for you to either actually propose or give me a real reason to leave. She asked how long I had felt that way. At least 2 years. I told her honestly, maybe longer. I stopped keeping track of when the numbness started. She dropped onto the couch, head in her hands, crying for real now. She confessed she was scared to really propose, because she didn't want things to change, didn't want the pressure of marriage. She thought if she kept it funny, we could stay exactly how we were forever. I felt a flash of pity, but I shoved it away. Your fear cost you the relationship anyway. I stated. Now you get to feel publicly humiliated, just like I did 15 times. She asked if there was any chance I would change my mind. I grabbed another box and silently headed for the door. There was nothing left to say. I drove to Chloe's place, my sanctuary. She took me in without question. The next day, I found myself staring at apartment listings, but the trauma ran deeper than rent prices. I called a therapist I found through my insurance. In our first session, I described the 4 years of pain, and my therapist introduced me to the concept that finally made everything click: the sunk cost fallacy. I hadn't stayed because I loved her. I had stayed because I had already invested 4 years and 15 humiliations, and I wanted them to mean something. Learning that I had been staying out of financial and emotional obligation, not love, was liberating. The intellectual work of healing had begun. 3 days later, my phone rang. Marcus Harris. My heart nearly stopped. He asked to meet me at a diner halfway between his house and Chloe's. I arrived, terrified he was going to cut me out of his life. He looked exhausted, but genuine. He told me he understood why I had done what I did. It hurt him personally that it started as manipulation, but he said he genuinely felt like he had gained a son over the last 2 months. He had talked to Chloe, who confirmed the extent of her sister's cruelty. He looked at me, stirring his coffee, and said, I'd like to continue our relationship, Stanley, but it needs to be honest from now on. No more games. Just 2 people who found an unexpected friendship. I started crying again, this time with relief. Marcus Harris, my emotional anchor, had stayed. He told me that his daughter made a lot of mistakes, but losing me might finally teach her something. I left the diner feeling lighter than I had in years. The emotional tie to her was severed. The relationship with Marcus, my unexpected father figure, was salvaged and formalized. The external validation was a powerful start to my new, independent life. With the toxic relationship finally a closed chapter, I began to channel the energy I once spent anticipating humiliation into rediscovering the person I was before I became a punchline. I stayed at Chloe's place for 2 weeks, searching apartment listings until I found a small but affordable place near my rehab center. My father helped me with the deposit, and my parents helped me move my 3 boxes of belongings. My ex had left the rest of my things neatly packed by the door, a small mercy. The apartment was tiny, just 1 bedroom with a galley kitchen, but it was mine. No more walking on eggshells, no more wondering when the next public joke would land. I spent the next few weeks decorating it exactly how I wanted, focusing on plants and warm lighting, creating a space of true security. The change at work was immediate. My concentration sharpened, and the exhaustion that had plagued me for years lifted. By lunch one Tuesday, my boss, who had previously questioned if everything was okay at home, called me into her office. I was terrified she had heard about the revenge proposal and thought I was unstable. Instead, she closed the door and sat across from me with a serious but kind expression. She told me about her own bad relationship 20 years ago, and how she had stayed too long with someone who made her feel small. Then, she told me they were promoting me to senior physical therapist. The position came with a raise and more responsibilities in patient care planning. She said I had been excelling lately, and she had noticed I seemed more confident during sessions, more present with patients. The promotion felt like tangible proof that leaving was the right choice, that I had been held back not by my ability, but by my emotional drain. To fully sever the connection to my old life, I needed new activities. I joined an indoor rock climbing gym. I specifically avoided hiking trails, which had been one of our shared activities. The gym was huge, with colorful holds going up 30 feet. I took a beginner class and met a group who climbed every Tuesday night: Sarah, Tom, and Jen. None of them knew anything about my past drama, the 15 proposals, or the public humiliation. I was just the new guy learning to lead a route. It was amazing to be just myself without the baggage. My social life also rebounded. Chloe and I were inseparable. She was planning her own wedding and insisted I still be a bridesmaid, saying I was family regardless of her sister. I also started reaching out to old college friends I had lost touch with. One friend, Sarah, apologized for drifting away, admitting that she and our other friends had stopped inviting us places because my ex's fake proposals made everyone so uncomfortable. She said they didn't know how to address the cruelty without attacking my relationship. Hearing that I wasn't crazy, that everyone saw it, was profoundly validating. Then came Jesse Cooper. He was a middle school teacher I met when his class came to the climbing gym for a field trip. He had watched me patiently help one of his students figure out a tricky route and asked for my number afterward. Our first date was coffee. It was easy and comfortable. He made me laugh constantly, but his jokes were about himself or random observations, never at my expense. When I talked, he listened and remembered details about my life. Our relationship was built on small, consistent acts of respect, the exact opposite of the roller coaster I had been on. He called when he said he would call. He kept plans. When I had a bad day, he asked how he could help instead of making a joke to deflect. My mother even pulled me aside at dinner and said she could see the difference in my face, that I looked lighter somehow. Marcus and I continued our monthly lunches. He was still processing his relationship with his daughter. He told me she had called him and asked him to stop seeing me, claiming it was too weird and uncomfortable. Marcus refused. I am an adult who chooses his own relationships, and her poor decisions don't get to dictate my friendships, he told me, frustrated but firm. His refusal to sever our bond was a powerful validation that I was not the manipulative monster she had claimed I was. 6 weeks after moving into my own space, a thick envelope arrived. It was the acceptance letter for a specialized physical therapy certification program I had applied to months ago. I realized how much energy I had wasted during my relationship with her. All the emotional labor, all the anticipation of the next cruel joke. Now, that energy was going into my career, my healthy new friendships, and my calm, respectful connection with Jesse. I was growing in ways that had been impossible when I was constantly putting out fires. The healing was no longer tentative, it was accelerating. A full year after the chaos of the birthday party, the dramatic ending was no longer the centerpiece of my life, it was merely the messy doorway to the life I deserved. My relationship with Jesse deepened steadily, built on consistent respect and honest communication. He never made me guess how he felt, and he never used my emotional vulnerability as a weapon. Chloe's wedding finally arrived. She had done an incredible job separating me and her sister at the venue, creating two separate experiences so we would not have to interact. I wore the bridesmaid suit she had picked out and stood proudly with her other friends. During the processional, my eyes met my ex's across the venue for maybe 2 seconds. He gave me a small, silent nod, an acknowledgement. I nodded back. There was no tension, no pain, just two people who used to share a life recognizing each other's existence. At the reception, after the traditional dances, Chloe grabbed the microphone and announced she wanted to invite all her honorary family members to the dance floor. She looked right at Marcus Harris, who was sitting at a nearby table. Marcus stood up, extended his hand to me, and we walked out onto the dance floor together. We were terrible dancers, but as we swayed, Marcus told me Chloe had specifically planned this moment. He said the family now talked about the revenge proposal like it was a legendary story, not with judgment toward me, but with a strange pride that someone had finally called out bad behavior. The dance ended, and we hugged. In that moment, I realized the drama from months ago had faded into just another family anecdote, a dark moment that led to something ultimately stronger. 3 months later, Jesse and I had the serious conversation. We were at his apartment, and he asked if we could be exclusive. He had already met my parents, who loved him, and my friends constantly commented on how different he was from my ex, specifically how he communicated clearly instead of hiding behind jokes. I said yes. He treated respect like the baseline, not something he deserved credit for. Then came the final piece of closure. Chloe showed up at my apartment one Saturday morning with a handwritten letter, 3 pages long. My ex had asked her to deliver it. I almost didn't take it, but I needed to know. Inside, he apologized formally. He didn't make excuses or try to explain away the 15 fake proposals. He acknowledged that he had hurt me repeatedly, humiliated me publicly, and failed to see the damage he was doing until it was too late. He wrote about his own fear of commitment and how he had used humor as a shield, which he was working through in therapy. He said he understood why I did what I did at his father's party and wished me genuine happiness. No requests to talk or get back together, just true closure. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, feeling acceptance, not forgiveness. A heavy weight had lifted from my chest, and the anger was finally gone. My therapist helped me process the revenge proposal. She validated the satisfaction I got from taking back power, but she challenged me to recognize red flags early in the future, to use direct communication and walk away when a line was crossed, rather than waiting until revenge felt necessary. This was the final step, learning to advocate for myself healthily. 6 months after moving in with Jesse, Chloe called with news. My ex had gotten engaged to his girlfriend. She had seen the photos online. He had actually proposed for real this time, at the beach at sunset, with a ring, no joke or twist. I felt a wave of genuine happiness for him, hoping he had learned something. He was giving her the real commitment I had waited 4 years for. Marcus Harris and I had dinner at my new apartment a few weeks later. I made pot roast, which he loved. After dinner, he looked at Jesse and me and grew quiet. He told me he was grateful the universe had brought me into his life, even through such messy circumstances. "You are the daughter I never had, Stanley," he said. I started crying, and Jesse squeezed my hand under the table while I told Marcus I felt exactly the same way. I had gained real family, completely separate from the disaster that had brought us together. 2 years after I left him, I woke up next to Jesse in our apartment and lay there, thinking about how different my life looked now. I had a job I loved, a relationship built on honest communication, and strong relationships with my family, Chloe and Marcus. The revenge proposal felt like something that happened to a completely different person, someone angrier and more desperate than I was now. I didn't regret standing up for myself, But the life I had built afterward, the life of consistent respect and peace, was better than any revenge could ever be. I was finally just Stanley, and I was finally safe.